meet the challenges that they're facing. And so often I think as riders, we have these kinds of challenges. It's not a big R, but it's a little r. And so these are the minions. I love the little Disney minion movies. You know, they're the kind of zero mentality, you know. And they have a different mindset. They wear a different set of lenses. You know, they're the ones who see their responses as inadequate. And I'm telling you what, these folks fill up doctors' offices. They fill up counseling offices. They fill up all kinds of places, thinking that their responses are inadequate. And that's what I call the zero lens. This is a picture of my 5 kids, by the way, and we call them the Fabulous 5. But you'll notice what people with the zero equation in their mind, what they say. They say things like, I'm not good enough. I'm inadequate. I can't do this. And so, so many times we oscillate between these two things, between feeling like we're a hero and feeling like we're a zero. Now, what this looks like as riders sometimes, you know, if our book does well, if people notice our book, then guess what? We pat ourselves on the back, we're the hero. But sometimes when we publish a book, or we promote a book, or we launch a book, and it's crickets. Have you ever had that experience? How do we feel? We feel like a zero, don't we? It's that hero, zero. It's that seesaw of basing our acceptance on our performance. You ever thought that way about yourself? I think we all have those emotions as riders, is that we base our acceptance either for ourselves or for other people or even for our spiritual with God. We base our acceptance on our performance. You know, when I first heard this equation from a self-help guru, at first I kind of said, well, that sounds kind of great. Of course, he didn't talk about the zero part. His whole focus was getting you from a zero to a hero. But the more I began to think about that, the more I began to think, you know, there's got to be something else. There's a missing factor here in this way of thinking. And I think so often as riders, we focus on our performance. We focus on moving from a zero to becoming a hero. And there's several things that are missing. First of all, we know, I've already told you 2 of those things. First of all, that having adequate responses, in a sense, from whatever worldview you want to look at it, is inadequate. We're just never going to measure up. We're going to be like Mr. Incredible. And the other thing is that often our responses hurt other people, you know, when we have that hero mentality. But there's another thing. If you think about this equation, I'm not a mathematician, but you know, 2 plus 2 is 4, okay? 2 plus 2 is not 6. 2 plus 2 is not 8. And one of the problems with this equation is that it's defined based upon arbitrary absolutes. See, think about this. Who says that Hitler is right or Hitler is wrong and Mother Teresa is right or wrong? You see, and that's where we are in our culture right now. We have a culture based upon arbitrary absolutes. And we're talking mathematics. There's got to be another level of thinking in our lives. It's based upon absolutes. Now, for those of us who understand Christianity, we understand that Christianity is based upon absolutes. Not based upon what we understand in our finite understanding. There's something that's external, an external reference to us that we can begin to understand these absolutes. But there's another thing. You see, this C plus R plus O way of thinking, this hero-zero mentality, it doesn't match reality. Now, I know many of you we've all kind of coming out of COVID and just thinking about that. You know, I think about the fact that, and I've seen this so many times as a physician, we can have a perfect response. You know, we can give all the right medicines, do all the right things to people with the very same risk factors with COVID. One comes in the hospital, we do the very same thing, one dies and one lives. How do you explain that? I struggle with that as a surgeon because sometimes I oscillate between that hero and that zero. You know, you do everything right, you do the same thing, techniques, same tools, and yet one does really well and one has a bad outcome. how do we understand that? You know, and even in your writing, how do we filter that? You know, sometimes it seems like we write something and it just seems to be like a total flop. And sometimes the things that we think that, you know, really aren't that good, people just seem to love. Have you ever had that experience? Yes. And so I want to just introduce to you something. There's a better way. Just to take courage. There's a better way to see yourself as a writer. A better way than seeing yourself as a victim or a zero or a hero.